And we're live. Hello, hello, and welcome to the B2B Live Lounge on a Thursday at 3. Today, I'm really excited to introduce to you somebody who I've met quite recently on LinkedIn and just formed this wonderful relationship. So I'd like to introduce you to Victoria Reynoldson. Hi, Victoria.
Hello, Sarah, and thank you so much for inviting me onto the show.
My absolute pleasure. So, Victoria, I always ask my guests to introduce themselves because I think you do it so much better than I do. So, tell the world, tell everybody what it is that you do.
Thank you. So, I'm a leadership communication coach and culture intelligence trainer, and I'm helping people to speak with authority, amplify their impact, and collaborate across the world, across all different borders and with different countries. And what that practically means is that I help people who are really ready to step up, whether it's in their career or in their business, through the way that they're speaking and communicating. And recently, that's included things like helping people to speak when they are doing a keynote at a conference or when they're on a panel. Or maybe even one person I was working with recently preparing to speak for TV appearances as well. So, whatever that looks like, I'm there to help them step up into their speaking, their authority, and really sharing their wonderful expertise.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. You explained it really well. So, we're really clear on what it is that you do. One of the things that you do and you talk about is how speaking and communicating in a different way can help you sort of in life in general, and it can help you open door, it can help open doors for different opportunities, and it can help even with promotions at work or getting new hires. And I'm intrigued about all of those things that can happen in our lives to help us grow and be different people. Is communication the key? Is it absolutely the key? And if it is, or if it's part of the key, how can it work and how does it work?
I think that's a really brilliant question, because obviously there are lots of factors that might go into how somebody is growing and developing, whatever their path looks like. But I do have a very strong belief that the way that we communicate, the way that we speak has a big impact, a big contributing factor to how we are perceived and experienced. And the kinds of people that I work with are already have amazing experience, years of experience and expertise behind them. So sometimes they're very highly qualified in what they do. Sometimes it's the fact that they've done years and years of experiences and sort of led lots of teams. Sometimes it's the fact that they've been working in a particular area for a long time, whether that is more on the corporate side or running their own business. But what happens is there comes a point where they have almost reached a ceiling with what they're doing. They are fantastic at what they do, and they're seen as great performers, but they know they can do more. And these people that I tend to attract into my world and I tend to work with, they are incredibly talented, ambitious. They know they can go for more, but they kind of know to do that, they need to step it up even further. They need to lean into becoming a leader. And that's when the barriers come up in people's minds. How do I get seen as a leader? How do I feel like a leader? Because I don't feel like it today. And for me, the speaking, the communicating are really key components to this, because the way that you are experienced, the way that people receive you, the way that you build your reputation is often through the way that you communicate that experience, that expertise, those valuable insights and knowledge areas that you have. And that is why it is, in my view, whatever field you're in, so critical. If you're really determined, become a leader in that field.
I love that. I love the fact that you're saying, because basically being a leader is good communication, isn't it? You can't lead people, and if you can't communicate how you want them to be and how you're going to lead. And what I love about the sort of work that you do is you work with people who already have that knowledge and that expertise, but you help them get it out to prove to other people, I suppose, that they have that.
Yeah, but there's also something that has to happen before that, which is they have to actually recognize it in themselves. And I think sometimes this is the starting point that I find for people, that no matter how much they kind of in theory get that they're good at what they do, there has to be a real deep recognition and acknowledge of it from the heart that they really know it. And that level of confidence, even if somebody appears to be confident, that can sometimes be surface level. And so what I'm also helping people with is think about, okay, how do I do this? I might be confident in these situations, but then the idea of stepping onto stage and talking to a big group of people about what I know to be true, suddenly, again, this is where barriers come up. So, a core part of the way that I approach my work is really helping people with confidence. That's one of the 4 pillars that I help people with.
So do you think the confidence, is that your first pillar? Is that where you start?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even again, if somebody appears to be fairly confident on the outside, confidence is context and people specific. So what happens is that as we start to stretch our comfort zone and start to do things that are beyond the everyday and the normal that we're in, that starts to test how we feel. And it's at this point that people kind of either start to lean into that, even though they do feel uncomfortable, or they start to back away and they start to lean away from those opportunities. And sometimes people describe it as, I know in logically what I need to go and do, but I can just feel myself literally backing away from the opportunity. Sometimes people will say yes to an opportunity, as happened to a client of mine recently, but then suddenly realized how utterly challenging that was, and really, sought my help to get them ready for the stage. This is why people find themselves in this almost hokey cokey dance of wanting it, but then backing away from it. So this is why confidence is a really core pillar. And as I say, it doesn't matter how confident people feel, there's always that edge where we can go deeper and further so they can grow ultimately with their speaking and communicating.
Amazing. I love the idea of the hokey cokey dance. And I get that. I can, I've been there myself.
Yeah.
You sort of think, yeah, I really want to do this. I want to be that person standing on that stage or whatever it is. And then as it gets closer and closer, you think, I can't do it. I can't,
Yeah.
I don't have the knowledge or the confidence. But actually, I suppose, I'm guessing, okay, so here's a question. So do people come to you and do they know that they don't have the confidence, or is there another underlying problem that they think they have, and perhaps it's all tied around with confidence or lack of?
Yeah, I mean, the kinds of problems like people come to me with, I mean, sometimes it is genuinely, confidence. They recognize that they're getting in their own way, that if they could feel the confidence, they could do this. But I have particular sort of philosophies on confidence. And for me, that is, something that's really important to understand. Like, we don't feel confident before we do the thing. We have to do the thing. And then when we do it repeatedly, then eventually we feel confident. But that is, one kind of problem that people sometimes come to me with. But sometimes it's not expressed in this way. Sometimes it's not about the confidence per se. It could be that actually that what they're finding is that they're not feeling like they're able to express their ideas clearly. So for people in a corporate or organization, they might kind of feel like they have their own expertise, but they can't really translate that and express that in a way that really lands well with senior management or the board. And they find it hard sometimes to get the support for their ideas and get their recommendations approved or listened to carefully to their views. So clarity could be the challenge. Sometimes it's, I'm working with people who are needing to influence lots of different stakeholders, maybe internally, if they're in an organization, or if they're a business owner, they have a lot of different potential prospective clients who are current. They might have other organizations they're trying to influence. And what they recognize is actually for them, it's about engaging communication. How can they sound more everyday or more human, or how can they really build the rapport with people? Particularly, I mean, my specialism tends to be with people who are working in global contexts. I mean, that's not exclusively what I do, but it does seem to me that is the bigger challenge, because particularly if you're not meeting people, then you need to work even harder at building this connection virtually.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that because you work with people globally, you've got different cultural aspects also that need to be borne in mind when you're teaching, because presumably it's very different across in different countries and cultures.
Absolutely. So one area of my work is what I call cultural intelligence. And what this is really about at its simplest form is understanding the way that we interact and we communicate and we behave is driven by our cultures. And that isn't just like national culture. It could be the fact that, I'm a Londoner, that I'm a business owner, that I have had a previous corporate career. These all shape who I am and how I show up in the world. And so I have to understand that's not the same as how others show up. So I need to really understand that, stepping into, and this is the work I also do with leaders and future leaders, is that to do this really, really effectively, you need to understand how to adapt your own communication style to really connect with that person, so that you're not just broadcasting, but you're actually listening. You're able to respond thoughtfully to how they are expressing their opinions and views. And this is really critical when you get challenging conversations, when you get the conflict and disagreements, because the only way to really move through that is to recognize that maybe you're not speaking the same language. Yes, you could be speaking a language like English commonly, possibly across the globe, but it's not, you may not be speaking the same language in terms of the way you're expressing yourselves.
Got you. So your message just isn't landing at all.
Yeah, that it could be as simple as that. Yeah. And they may be really indirect in their communication style, and they think they're being very clear. They're not happy about how things are, or they're disagreeing with you. And you may not be taking that message out of it at all, for example.
Yeah, I've got that. So as well as teaching people to stand on big stages or even medium or small stages, you also help in many people in many, many other spheres and areas. And, from, conflict situations at work, all of those kinds of things. And it's all about communication.
It is. I mean, what I'm really, really passionate about is helping people to really understand each other and recognize that communicate, when we're speaking, we have to take into account this idea of communication and culture. And there's so much that is embodied in that. So, that's why I have those 4 pillars in my work: the confidence, the clarity, the connection with cultural intelligence. And you have also this challenging conversations pillar, because this is the thing that really trips people up. Again, whether they're in a large corporate organization or a solo business owner, challenges and conversations come up. And we need to be quite skillful in understanding how do we respond but don't react in these situations.
Oh, I love that. Yes. As a business owner, I have many, many challenging conversations, probably most days, challenging to some degree, either with clients, with hopefully, future clients, with my team. There's always, not always, but there's usually some kind of conflict's quite a strong word, but there's always, something that you have to listen to somebody else's point of view and adapt and think, and how you're going to respond to that. And it's great that you've got these amazing 4 pillars, very, very structured, to help, your clients work through those situations.
Well, I mean, thank you. I mean, what I really find is that They are very broad pillars, but they're also really great because we can then dial up and dial down on what is needed for the particular person or the team. So we can really think about the priority order of these and the right ratio, like as if you're making a cake, what levels do you need of each of those different ingredients to make it really work for the individual or for the team and the challenges they're specifically facing as well.
Oh, I love that. So yes, somebody who's very, very confident, for example, but don't have that sort of cultural touch point, if you like, that's just not going to work, is it? They need both. They need a mixture of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's about bringing those into balance, right? Like understanding and recognizing that people have strengths already in some of these areas, but actually there are areas which are causing them challenges in their either everyday work relationships or actually are genuinely holding them back from fulfilling their potential. For those people who are on career paths within organizations, that can feel deeply frustrating. Like you're stuck, you can't move forward, you think you should be promoted already, you're not there yet, you're being told later. And that is really frustrating. If you know you could do it, if you're given the chance, but you're not, but you sort of know you're missing something, one of those ingredients to really make it work. And then equally, if you're a business owner, as business owners, regardless of the size of your business, you really have to have all of those ingredients to be successful, because ultimately your business lives or dies by your communication, whether that is just a one-to-one conversation or whether you're standing on a stage in front of thousands of people telling them about your expertise and knowledge areas.
Absolutely. All of it, they're all so important. And I think as a business owner, I've learnt some of these things along the way just by making mistakes, really.
Yeah.
And that's really not the best way, not always the best way to learn.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to jump in there because if you don't mind, Sarah, I have quite a strong view, which is there's a real sense that, and particularly because I find I end up working with people who are quite, they're high performing, they're very ambitious, so they're often quite, used to be able to be achieving those high levels of results. But at the same time, when it comes to speaking and communicating, the more pressure you put on yourself, the more that you go for perfect and for making it absolutely like this, the harder it becomes. And in fact, I was having a conversation the other day with a client about this. Actually, you can't, perfectionism, is not actually the goal with speaking and communicating. In fact, what you want to be having is a conversation. And that is really true, again, whether you're talking one-to-one or you're talking to, the world. You want to sound like a human. And if you think about even sort of like high level speaking like TEDx, again, the style is really conversational. It's not about acting and trying to be putting on a performance. And I really believe in this day and age that this idea of making mistakes, even when you're speaking and fluffing up and starting again, this is positive. We should embrace this, in fact, which is why, I'm really conscious, and I'm also admit, I make mistakes as well. Like this is part of it. We all do. And that's normal and natural and should be expected.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're right in that making mistakes, when you're talking and you're speaking, sometimes actually helps the audience feel closer to you because you're more human. I was sort of thinking about mistakes I've made perhaps with previous members of the team when I've maybe said the wrong thing and thought, I do it with my kids all the time, I'm sure. But anyway, so communication is, it's a massive, massive subject, obviously. And what we've been talking about, and the big part of what you do is oral communication, is speaking, whether you're on the stage or whether you're, one-to-one or in small groups or whatever. But obviously there are other forms of communication, which is where, I have sort of my world is communicating your message out on LinkedIn and on other social media platforms as well. And I'm interested to learn, when you work with your clients, is that a part of the sort of the process as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. So I have a part of me that is also, I think, in a marketing way because of my background. So I spent 12 years in working in brand marketing in global organizations. And so I've always recognized the power of certain platforms and certain ways to communicate. And so in my work, what I sometimes are helping my clients do when they're stepping up into this idea of being the leader is also helping them think about their thought leadership, which I know is an area you're very specialist in as well. But this idea of, how do you not only, don't think about just within your organization, but think about more broadly, how do you share your perspectives? Because if you start to get recognized in the industry and across multiple touch points, that certain things, that you have certain insights and opinions which are really valuable, then this starts to become something that almost becomes self-fulfilling internally and externally, that you are recognized as the leader in a specific area. And so what that looks like is, I do think that more people should be maximizing their LinkedIn profile. Absolutely, people should be engaging more on LinkedIn in a meaningful but also appropriate way, recognizing like it's not their job to spend 100% of their day on LinkedIn. But for me, LinkedIn is also a really important part of how I communicate as well, because I think, I, just like you, Sarah, I value it as a place. I don't, yes, it's a platform, but it's a place where I'm meeting people. And that ultimately is what it's about for me, making connections, having really great conversations. We met through LinkedIn. Many of my podcast guests I've met through LinkedIn, even though they're based all over the world. And I feel so lucky and grateful that I've then gone on to meet many of those people in real life and made genuine friendships, both, from a work perspective, but also even personal perspective. And I think that is why I really value LinkedIn also personally. But that's been my experience of it. I'm really curious how you, I know your real kind of focus is on LinkedIn, but how you see it at this current moment in time.
Oh, I'm loving LinkedIn at the moment, and I do see it right now, beginning of 2025, as being more communicative and more friendly, if you like, than ever before. And I know there are some people who criticize that the way that LinkedIn is moving, but we want to communicate. We want to talk to people. We need that communication, and it's really important that we have it. Because so many of us now are working at home or, remotely, but also the world has got smaller and smaller. And
Yes.
thanks to places like LinkedIn, that we can communicate with people all over the world really, really simply. And I think it is really important that we're having conversations, proper, genuine conversations on LinkedIn. And it's so easy to do that. And there are so many different ways that we can do that on LinkedIn, which is obviously why I love the platform. And those relationships then grow into all kinds of different things. Hopefully for many people it's business, but it can be so many other opportunities. So, for example, we met on LinkedIn. You're on my live show. You've already interviewed me, and I'm going to be going out on your podcast shortly.
Yeah.
And all of these things just help us all build our own brands and communicate to a wider world. And I think it's almost magic that we can do this. It's just fantastic. How many people we could meet here and the opportunities that are there.
Yeah.
And talking of communication, if you are watching, please come and say hi. Put a note in the comments, just say hello. And if you have a question for Victoria about communication, about speaking, about anything around that sphere, please do pop it in the comments, and I'm sure she'll be happy to answer that. So that would be great. So I'll keep an eye on the comments, so please do post in the comments. So talking of podcasts, Victoria, your podcast is an award-winning podcast.
It is, yes.
Tell us about that. Come on, let's hear it.
Well, actually, to be strictly sort of true, so the podcast itself is a global rank. So I'm top 5% globally, which I'm very proud of. Amazing. And it also has hit the top 10 in the career charts in the UK when it launched, which I was, but it was an amazing achievement. I was really proud of it. But I think the big thing for me is, I mean, yes, those things are amazing, and I do receive them with absolute gratitude. And at the same time, the bigger thing for me is that what started off as being a way to think about how do I connect with people all around the world who don't know me yet? Like, how can I do this in a meaningful way? And started off almost as a, let's just see where this goes. Like, I'm really intrigued to see how this kind of develops. I'm now like something like 115 episodes later, 2 years in. And one of the things that I've realized is just people listen to it. There's also a video version, so people watch it on YouTube as well. And they are listening and watching literally all over the world, in countries that I hadn't even realized I had any kind of resonance or I knew anybody in these countries. And for me, that is really satisfying, because it feels like then I can help more people. I can bring more ideas that people genuinely can experience and learn from. And, I'm very much about the practical action. So for me, what's really important is that, they're quite short, sharp episodes, that people have a real sense of, okay, what can I do with this? How can I bring this into the workplace now or into my business? And I have a series of guests as well, of course, including you, Sarah, coming up very, very soon on the show. But, for me, podcasting has been a brilliant way to connect. And I genuinely really enjoy it when I kind of get a LinkedIn message, a DM out the blue from somebody I didn't really know, but saying like, I've been listening. I've either got a question or, really like the podcast, which is fantastic. It's amazing to hear when people are listening into the show. And I should mention it's called Cultural Communication Confidence. Yes. I should mention that. So please feel free to come and listen on all the usual platforms and YouTube as well.
Absolutely, definitely. And it's just another form of communication, isn't it? It's just another channel that we can use to get our message across. We have a question.
Great.
Oh, there it is. From Sarah Gonzalez Martin. She says, hello, I have a question. In your experience, how does an accent affect communication? Do you work on that as part of the cultural communication? Great question, Sarah.
It's a great question. Thank you so much, Sarah, for raising that question. So I have a really strong philosophy on accents, which is, accent is often part of personality. So regardless of where your accent is from originally, often it is an expression of who we are. What I am really paying attention to is clearly, I've talked about clarity as being one of the key pillars of my work. Clearly, people need to be able to understand you so that you're comprehensible, that they don't have to really listen in super sort of carefully to understand what you're saying. So the only reason I would talk about accent would be in the context of, actually, are you being clear enough? Do you need to either maybe think about your pace if you have a stronger accent? Do you need to think about how you express your ideas so that it's just very clear and succinct? But also there is the other side of this, which is, we live in a world which is really diverse with lots of diverse voices. And in fact, sometimes it's also about me helping an organization to recognize they need to tune their ears. They need to tune their ears to listen to a range of international Englishes, because we are, lucky in some respects. English is a common language in business across parts of the globe. But obviously, if you are speaking English as a second, third, even fourth language, you're working so much harder to express the nuances of what you want to say in that second or third or fourth language. So I also think there is a real duty and a responsibility for people who are lucky enough to be born with English as their first language to tune their ears, to try really hard to make sure that everybody is included in the conversation and that they are leaning into listening and understanding. So it's a slightly different answer, maybe possibly than you expected, Sarah, but I hope that's really answered your question.
I think that's a really good answer, actually. And I think it's not necessarily just an accent that makes it difficult to understand what somebody is saying. I mean, I hear mumblers, people who mumble. It's very difficult to hear what they're saying. And I sometimes feel, ask them to repeat or, be clearer. And sometimes it gets to the third time and I still haven't understood what they've said because they're mumbling or they're talking with their head down or something like that. And it's nothing to do with an accent. And I feel rude for continuing to ask them to repeat themselves. And I think, well, maybe it's my issue. Maybe I need to sort my ears out or something. But, so yes. And you obviously did the right thing there, Victoria, because Sarah has said it's perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad, Sarah. I'm really, really glad. But yeah, I mean, challenges in communication can come up in all sorts of forms, whether it's about accent, whether it's about understanding, whether it's about even things like, dare I say, like jargon, buzzwords, acronyms. Like we sort of assume, again, talking about speaking the same language, we sort of assume that everybody gets what we mean. But actually, sometimes that can lead to the biggest miscommunication because nobody wants to put their hand up and say, actually, what do you even mean by that? And I know myself, like I've had the experience of changing even within the marketing industry from one organization to another, and them having a totally different language with acronyms, with the words that they're using to call different, even bits of accountancy. For me, this was always very baffling, like how there can be such a language that goes with the culture of an organization. But it's something to be very mindful of. And something that I'm really keen to encourage is that if you're bringing new people into your team, organization, into the way you're working, really think about what needs translating, what needs to be explained, or even better, simplify your language. Think about how you're communicating and adapting to make sure that everybody is included.
Absolutely. And I think what's really important there is understanding your audience. Because depending who you're speaking to, you may walk into a room and that everybody in that room understands the acronyms that you're going to be using. And that's fine. So use them. But alternatively, if you walk into a different room, you may be approaching talking to a very, very different audience who have no clue at all about what a CRM system is, what's SEO even, whatever those acronyms are that you use in your business. So I think understanding your audience is really key there.
Definitely. And I think, there's loads of layers to this, but even things like humor can be cultural, slang, buzzwords I've mentioned already, but these things aren't always immediately obvious. And I think we all need to be better at recognizing that some of these things aren't kind of universally comprehensible. So, this is something to be mindful of and thoughtful of in your own communication, particularly if you're in that perspective of how do I step up as the leader of people, of an organization, of a team.
Yes. In fact, yesterday I was giving a training to a company and there were people from 6 different countries in that training.
Yeah.
And hello, this is challenging. Humor is something I do try to use and joy and fun. I try to use a lot. And luckily I think all of them actually were on board and they did understand and they got the humor and the lightness of touch. But I was very conscious of watching everybody's faces and it was online, so it was a bit tricky, but making sure that I wasn't alienating anybody with what I was saying because there were so many different cultures there. So it's all of these little nuances you have to be very careful of, don't you?
Absolutely.
So, Victoria, I have realised we've gone slightly over time, as we always do, because it's just such an enjoyable time talking to my guests on this show. I do have one more question for you, but before I ask you the final question, I think you have a secret something happening quite soon that you want to talk about.
I do. So I'm going to be incredibly mysterious to talk about the secret thing. But basically, if anything has resonated here today, I want to let people know that on the day of this recording, we have, I've got something brand new coming tomorrow. So that's Friday, the 31st of January, 2025. But if you cannot wait and you've been listening to this live, you've been following and you're really keen to know what it is, and just to let you know, the clues are leader and communication and speaking, then just DM me and I'll give you a secret preview just for you, just because you've been watching the show. But everything will be revealed tomorrow. We'll be fully live. I'll put up, if it's okay, put a link on the comments as well once it's all fully live. But anybody who wants that sneak peek preview, just get in touch. I'm really happy to share it with you. Just you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So anybody who's listening and watching, you know where to go. That's brilliant. And presumably there'll be a post going out on LinkedIn tomorrow.
Absolutely. And look out for that. Yes, indeed.
Brilliant. So my final question is the question I ask all my guests. And it's, if you've got, so everybody listening or watching now or listening in the, to the podcast when it comes out finally, can you give them 3 actionable tips that can help them in some way that they can actually do and right away?
Absolutely. So that's sort of some of the summary of the tips and things we've been talking about here today. So the first one I want to really share is believe you are the leader now. So knowing, believing that you're the leader is a decision you can just make. Nobody has to give you the title. Nobody has to give you the job role. Nobody has to give you a special award that says you are the leader. Start believing it today from this moment, and you're going to start showing up in a really different way. So that's the first tip I want to land. The second tip is really something I've been talking about to do with confidence here today, which is you will not feel confident before you do the thing, before you stand on the stage, before you go on TV or whatever it is that you're doing. Practice makes confidence. So that's really important to recognize. You're not going to feel that feeling of confidence until you've done the thing several times, which really relates to the third and final tip I have for everyone listening here and watching here, which is there is no such thing as perfection when it comes to speaking and communicating. So just get rid of it. Take it out of your language. Be human. Have a conversation. Don't try and perform or act in a certain way that you think somebody else would do it or copy somebody else's style. Just do you. Recognize you'll make mistakes and it'll be totally fine.
Oh, I love those. So believe you are the leader now, which reminds me actually of oh gosh, what was the TV program when they were doing the power pose before she went into meetings? And I loved that. It was just brilliant. So yes, doing the power pose, but believe you're the leader now. Because unless you believe it, nobody else will, right? And also the second tip is that you won't feel confident before you do it. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, because it's, unless you know what you're doing, you will be frightened of it, won't you? Because you don't know it. And I've written some notes here, but I was obviously not writing very well. And there's no perfection.
There's no
perfection. So we cannot strive for perfection. So that 3 amazing tips. Victoria, thank you so much for joining me today on the B2B Live Lounge. And finally, where can we find you? Where's the best place to find you?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to say a massive thank you, Sarah. Really enjoyed this. It's been really great conversation. And, thank you also for the brilliant questions as well, and listening very carefully to my answers. It's really, really great. But no, for anybody who is, today has resonated with them, they're like, right, I am ready for this. I'm ready to step into being the leader. Just need to know how I do this. How do I really now move forward? And get out of my own way and start speaking, communicating, and being that person, I would love to talk to you. So LinkedIn is my natural home. Do come and say hello, follow me, connect, send me a DM. I mentioned the podcast. Come and have a little listen. The episode goes up on a Monday on my LinkedIn profile. And my name is Victoria Reynoldson, which you can see on the screen. So that is the best place to come and find me.
Brilliant. Victoria Reynoldson, thank you for being on the B2B Live Lounge.